Yes, we are live now.
Hello and welcome everyone to Ananke's Festival of Literature. It is an absolute delight to welcome my honored guests. Today's session is titled The Responsibility of Imagination When Fiction Confronts Reality. A little bit about this session. How much responsibility do fiction writers bear when their stories tackle politics, social, and ethical issues? This discussion dives deep into tensions between creative freedom and accountability, exploring how storytelling can balance truth, narrative, and influence. With this, I'd like to begin with the introductions, and I'll go with Muhammad Hanif first. Muhammad Hanif was born in Okara, Pakistan in 1965. He graduated from Pakistan Air Force Academy and then worked as a pilot for the Air Force, for the Pakistan Air Force. After a few years in the military, he decided to change profession and embark on a career as a journalist and writer. Hanif moved to London with his family in the late 1990s. There, he worked for the BBC, wrote articles for The Guardian and The New York Times, as well as his own literary works. Several plays and the screenplay for the film The Long Night, directed by Raat Chali Hai Jhoom Ke, were written in London. The author also completed the renowned creative writing program at the University of East Anglia in the English capital in 2008. His debut novel, A Case of Exploding Mangoes, published in 2008, sorry about that, was published, with which Hanif abruptly became an international best-selling author. In his satirical examination of the still unsolved plane crash of August 17, 1998, in which Pakistani military dictator Mohammad Ziaul Haq, several high-ranking generals, and a U.S. ambassador were killed, he delivers a fast-paced, witty, and at the same time relentless analysis of patriarchal power systems with all their struggle and intrigue. Hanif, who has been living back in Pakistan since the end of 2008, where he works as a BBC correspondent in Karachi, has been celebrated by critics for his perceptive, socially analytical eye, and for his outstanding narrative qualities. Muhammad Hanif has received numerous awards, including the Koren Literature Prize and the Commonwealth Writers' Prize for Best Debut, was nominated for the Man Booker Prize and the Guardian First Book Award for A Case of Exploding Mangoes, and for the Wellcome Trust Book Prize and the DSC Prize for South Asian Literature for Our Lady of Alice Bhatti. In 2013, Hanif wrote a report commissioned by the Human Rights Commission of Pakistan on dissidents whose trail was lost in Balochistan. So welcome, Hanif.
Thank you.
Priya Hajela is a fiction writer who lives in Pune, Goa, and New York with an entrepreneur husband and two tiny ferocious dogs. Her son is an investigative journalist, and her daughter works at a public defender's office in NYC. Priya graduated with an MFA in creative writing from Goddard College in Vermont in 2017 after 22-year corporate career and an MBA from Vanderbilt University in 1992. Her career began in the US, where she worked for several telecommunication majors. She continued on the telecommunication track in India from 2004 to 2015, when she decided to return to school and take up writing. Priya is the author of Lady's Tailor, a novel published by HarperCollins India in 2022. She has written and published several short stories, An Affair in and Indian Ruminations, The Tattoo Artist in Live Encounters, Daughter's Revenge in Kitab, and The Storyteller in Muse. An excerpt from Ladies' Tailors was used in in a collection of stories about Delhi titled Beast and Darbar, edited by Rakshanda Jalil. So welcome, Priya. And apologies for the incoherence. This is a disclaimer that I'm visually impaired, so it's a bit difficult sometimes. Subi Taba is a poet and writer from uh, Arun, Arundha Pradesh. She was one of the winners of Asian Writing Short Story Prize in 2020 and was shortlisted for the Twist and Twain Short Story Prize in 2021. She was awarded the South Asia Speaks 2021 Fellowship and won Penguin Random House's The Perfect Pitch Season 1. Her debut fiction, Tales from the Dawn Lit Mountains, published by Penguin Random House in India, released recently. She studied masters in agricultural science at SASRD, Nagaland University, and works as an agriculture development officer in Arunachal Pradesh. So welcome, Subi. So I'll just open my list of questions. Okay. And I'll begin with, let's begin with Hanif first. And my question to you is, are there any ethics and a sense of morality when it comes to imagination?
Thank you, Sabine. Thank you, Priya. And so I've thought about this question, and I'm afraid I don't really have an answer. So I'm just going to blab a little bit. I don't know. I don't think there should be because imagination is something where you go, or usually places where you can't go in real life. You go to kind of visualize things that don't happen in real life, or sometimes might be drawn from real life, but they don't happen. So that's where you go to tinker with the world. So I don't think that any ethics or any morality or any of those rules which we apply to our day-to-day life in family and in society and sort of a vis-a-vis state. So I don't think I don't think that's like one place which is free, where you can go, where there's nobody to judge you. But then you come back to the real world from that place, and you bring a story or a book or a novel or kind of so I think those rules then kind of start to apply again. But while you're there in that kind of sort of in your imagination, I don't think those rules should apply there. It's only when you return to the real world, then I think sort of some of those rules will inevitably kind of decide what you can and what you can't do.
Absolutely. Priya?
Okay, that's interesting actually, because I tried to work on a book. There's a lot of financial scams that happen every day, right? And in India, those are quite prevalent. And I wanted to kind of dig into write fiction based on a couple of these financial scams, and I struggled. I'm a corporate type. I'm a rule follower. And I really struggle to find a reason why people go and do the kinds of things that they do in their background. So I definitely think that my ethics, and a sense of my personal ethics and morality, fettered or kind of stunted my imagination when it came to, getting into the heads of these people who come up with these things, because I don't know what they're thinking clearly. I see I read what was in the news, but then I tried to see if I could go back into their childhood or their upbringing or what made them do what made Nirav Modi do the kinds of things that he did? What made him think that he was going to get away with it? I failed at that. So it does affect. I mean, I think my ethics definitely held me back when it came to imagining that sort of a thing.
Subi, how would you reflect on that? You're on the mute, Subi.
Oh, sorry. So for me, I think to a certain extent, a little bit of ethics and morality should be kept in mind in writing, especially when it's targeted for children or a younger audience who are still forming their principles and thoughts about life. But for a larger extent, for a truly creative writer, I feel like the canvas of imagination should be kept free from the responsibilities and constraints of reality. No? Fiction, I feel, should be like a battlefield where creativity and imagination should triumph the rules and regulations of our everyday life. And I feel like if a writer sets out to write with the weight of responsibility or fear of always being ethically and morally correct, it will constrain his truest creation. That's what I feel.
And going back to Priya's comment, just thinking, when we are writing or when when that creative process is taking place, or you're visualizing something or imagining, you're in that space, because you come packed with so many things, be it culture, be it ethics and morality, so does that framework, can that framework color your imagination, Hanif? How would you, what
Sorry, I
would you
thought
say
you
to
were
that?
talking to Priya. Sorry.
No, yeah.
No, can I
yeah.
ask one question, because this is
Sure,
very interesting
sure.
that when you start, like, when you said that your imagination kind of actually became a hindrance. So what happened with the idea? It's like a greed, kind of, corporate greed. Big money is a very, very compelling idea. So what did you do with that idea then after you?
I wrote a book.
Okay.
I wrote a book, and but I kind of I went into the youth, the childhood of hoods of some of these people who were involved, right?
Mhm.
So there's there have to be some influencers, there have to be some, it doesn't just happen on their own. So I dug into that, and there have to be some very compelling circumstances, maybe like unfortunately, in the case of Nirav Modi, which I studied intensely, who I studied intensely, he found somebody to bribe, and they took all this stuff, all the foreign transfers, they took off the books, so the Punjab National Bank paid their vendors off the books, and not out of their account. So it was a very simple thing, but I'm like, why would you, it was this illusions of grandeur, but where did they come from? Why did you think that you had to be like this global how I mean, there were Belgian diamond merchants. I mean, they're extremely wealthy people to begin with, right? But he wanted to be like, a film star. I could not get into his head enough to figure that out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. Sorry, Sabine, I kind of missed your question, because I was like,
Okay, and this question is for all of you. I ask you first because you spoke about imagination, and Priya gave her reflected on how ethics and come into place. But can ethics and morality and they serve as a framework? They're part and parcel of who writers are. They come with diverse backgrounds and socio-cultural perceptions and what have you. So does that framework color imagination?
I'm sure it does. Like from the accident of your birth and what school did you go to, what your parents were like, what neighborhood you grew up in, even to like what TV shows you watched, kind of sort of what movies appeal to you. And since we're talking about writing, so I think a lot of it is colored by what books we read and what books we liked and what books we just couldn't finish. So I think wherever we come from, it colors our imagination, and it also probably limits our imagination because Priya said something. If you're kind of sort of working in a certain environment where kind of rules are very important, like every decimal point kind of matters. So that kind of training also limits your imagination. But I think then the struggle always is to push those limits, to try and kind of bend them a little bit, to go beyond where people expect you to stop. Like you should push back a little bit and see where your imagination takes you. So yes, your imagination is colored by your kind of wherever you come from, but if you are trying to create something, then what you're trying to do is to kind of go beyond the limits set on you by your background, by your profession, by the society.
Priya?
Definitely. And I think that as a young, not age, but as a younger writer, I do tend to stick to what I know or what I want to find out without pushing the limits yet. But I do have a feeling, a very strong feeling that the more I write, the more I want to push those boundaries. I have to for myself, for just to make it interesting for myself. And like, for instance, I'm going to go back to this book that I have written, and I feel like I have failed because the story is not coming together. And it will be because I will have to get out of that comfort zone, that area, that place that I'm comfortable with. So I think that, I've grown up a certain way. I've changed certain things about myself I mean, I grew up in Ludhiana, I grew up in a small town. And that small town mentality went away the minute I landed in New York when I was 17. So, I mean, with each step that you take, I think your imagination should sort of, um, test, I mean, you should be testing where your imagination can go.
True. Subi, how would you reflect on that?
Yeah, I also feel that like ethics and morality reflects in the framework, because especially I feel like in a country like India, where people and the readers could be very sensitive about writings related to religion, politics, and community. So I feel like sometimes the writing gets a bit constricted when it comes to the full expression. Like there were times me as a young reader, when I was studying in Nagaland, I used to think, why has literature based on the insurgency has not come out in Nagaland? or like topics like headhunting, like in Nagaland and in Arunachal in the 17th, 18th century, the practice of headhunting was also practiced. But I think no literature has ever come out. So these things are very sensitive, I feel like that. And it does constrict a little bit of freedom, especially in a country as sensitive as India.
So my next question, and we'll start with you, Priya. What do you think is fiction? Is it truth telling? Is it a mirror? And when you talk about mirrors, they can be optics as well. So what we see is, it's all about media and political messaging, fear mongering. So what, according to you, is fiction?
So for me, fiction is a search for some kind of truth. And it's these questions that I've asked myself along the way. And I think the discovery process is itself, for me, is itself becomes a part of the story. As I search for truth, that makes its way into the story. And but also, I mean, to an extent, a mirror, because my characters are a reflection of me in many ways, or an anti-mirror, as I kind of say, is where my characters are the opposite of me, and the part where I'm searching for the truth, which is not always what I want to hear. So I am looking out for those things which are different from me, and yet, I think it's a direction that I want to take the story, which is uncovering the truth, whatever it may be, close enough to me, or not at all. I don't know if that.
Subi? Yeah. No, definitely makes sense.
Okay.
Subi, how?
Yeah, when I was starting out, as a writer, there was one quote I read somewhere, like, fiction is the truth we tell with our better minds. So I really believe that fiction is actually is a lie which tells the truth. And the nature of fiction is that it delves more deeper into the multiple and meaningful insights of human psyche. So I feel like fiction is, like a truth, because it might not be a factual truth, but it's the truth for the writer who has written the story based on his observation, based on his imagination, based on his experiences, memories. And for that particular story and for that moment, it would be a truth. Yeah, that's my answer.
Hanif, yeah. Same
I
question. Yeah.
Yeah, no, go
So
on.
same question. Yeah, same question, but an extension. But because it just came to my mind that maybe we are thinking in terms of binary as well, and fiction is more than just truth telling, and it's an aspiration, or is it an aspiration? How do you reflect on that?
Yeah, again, I don't really have an answer, but I think aspiration is a good word. And before that, Priya said that it's search for the truth. So I think it's not the truth, but it is definitely search for the truth, with the certainty that we're kind of, that everybody knows that we are making up a lie in search of a truth, and we don't really care. We don't really expect that we'll find the whole truth, but along the way we might get some glimmer of it. We might be able to see some of ourselves in it. We might be able to reflect the life that we've lived, or our concerns, or our or our madness somehow. It's a way to channel that. I've worked as a journalist as well, and sort of you're taught to believe that, oh, this is, sort of, this is the truth. This has been reported by two sources, and this is and there are rules of this game, and this is how, and this is the truth. And when you want to write fiction, then you leave this aside and you but I don't know. I think we all live in this world, and we've seen that, sort of some of what is being sold to us as the truth uh, is probably the most kind of, imaginative fiction that anybody has come up with. So there was a time that I used to think of it as a binary, like, this is my journalistic work and this is truth. And now I'm going to close my shop and, sort of do some, like, serious lying business, make up stuff, sort of let my imagination run wild. But I've begun to realize that that's not probably how it works.
That's true.
Mm.
So two things. Is it the responsibility of are we are writers and storytellers responsible to influence their readers and their readers?
Oh,
Priya, you go first.
okay. So I say yes, it is. As a reader, I am influenced by good storytellers, and my there's kind of two examples of this. One is Jerry Pinto's M and the Big Home, where he writes about his bipolar mother. My mother was bipolar. I wrote her story. It's not published. I'm not ready for that. But he influenced me enough to say, some things that, we had not, my sister and I had never really discussed. And then on another one, I read this book called Small Deaths. It's about sex workers in Sonagachi, Calcutta. And I don't know what prompted me to read the book, but it was probably book club or it wasn't a book I would have picked. And yeah, so then here I kind of was, became aware of the lives of sex workers, something like I said, I had not really gone out to look for. And I didn't become an activist or anything like that. But if something like that comes across, where I can support or help or whatever, I will, because now I've kind of been influenced enough by a story. M and the Big Home influenced me tremendously, of course, and personally. So I think we do, and we do have I think the storytellers do have a responsibility to influence.
Hanif?
Yeah, I don't know whether influence is the correct word, but obviously, anybody who's telling a story, their first responsibility is not to bore their reader, like, sort of grab them by the scruff of their neck and make them keep reading. I think that is your first and foremost responsibility. Now, influence, sort of, they'll take their own influence. You might have noticed this, that you write one book, and if 10 people read it, and if you talk to them, it seems like 10 people have read a different book. Sort of everybody kind of comes out with so you can't decide what influence who is going to take. There's obviously a broader politics around a book, and there's, like, sort of uh, 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 but yeah, yes, it is your duty to kind of, keep the reader with you. You can't really decide which bits of from your story are they going to be influenced by. But yeah, as a writer, you should be grateful if they are influenced by anything at all.
Subi?
Personally, I feel that it's like not the responsibility of a writer to influence, but it is inevitable. If a writer writes a good book, then I think it is inevitable that it becomes an influence because of the consequence of writing. Because writing shapes thoughts, and it's like a connective tissue which lets us go through the writer's journey, observe the world through his eyes, and in a sense of influence, I feel like there have been many creative writers who have started new forms of expression of art in writing, be it different forms of writing like epistolary writing or writing from different points of view, and also writers who have created a lot of historical impacts, and writers with ethical responsibility. And also there have been like many books in many cultures which have been modeled as a book for learning, ground for children. Like in India we have like Ramayana, on which a lot of our morals and responsibilities are based. So in a way, yes, writers cannot set out to write with the aim to influence, but if it's a good book, it will definitely influence a lot of people.
Can I add something?
Yes, please.
I mean, I would really not know what the definition of a good book is, but I think a lot of bad books influence a lot of people too.
Mm.
That has been known to happen.
True.
Known to happen as well.
True.
I think
Absolutely true.
if I may add something as well to the point
Yes.
about different people read books differently and take away very different things. Somebody who read M and the Big Home and didn't have mental health issues in their family and their background would look at it very differently. Whereas someone like me, I had to put it down every so many pages because I had to go, oh my God, I can't deal with this. I can't, so there is I think there's definitely that, is that different people read books and take very, very different things away from them.
True. So we I'll start with you. Is imagination the ultimate frontier? I was reading something, and Ben Okri basically said, the problem is with those who are frightened of the rather limitless validity of the imagination, frightened of people who continually extend the boundaries of the possible. It reminds me of the caveman analogy. So I asked this in context of our topic, when fiction, creativity, and imagination comes in contact with reality. So is it because, with the caveman analogy, they're blinded by this fact, they're blinded by the limitlessness of imagination.
Sorry, what is caveman analogy? Sorry.
The caveman and basically, the theory, these cavemen were, in the cave for many years in darkness. And when they went out, when they saw the sun for the first time, they were blinded by that, and then they ran back inside.
Okay.
Yeah. So are we afraid of that? Are we blinded by the limitlessness, or are we afraid of that limitlessness that imagination presents?
It's a very tough question and very difficult to answer. Is writing the ultimate frontier of imagination? Like when I usually set out to write something, I tend to write more about some of my lived experience, and also the possibilities of what things can happen in different frontiers. So imagination is an important part of my writing routine, and I tend to dwell more on research also. Like the more I research, it fuels more of my imagination, and the more I write, and the I enjoy the process of researching. So for me, I cannot, like, it's very difficult to answer. I cannot like call imagination as the sole frontier,
Yeah.
maybe. So I also enjoy reading others' works and interaction with people, and whatever I write, it's a culmination of everything that I experience as a human. The voices
Yeah.
I hear, the dreams I see, the food I have, my fears, insecurities. So perhaps it is a culmination of my
Yeah.
result as a human being with a nervous system,
Yeah.
well-developed
Priya?
neural system.
I also struggled with this. I'm struggling with this question a little bit, and because I kind of in that in that book about financial fraud, I threw in some incest and some funky stuff, some things to, I was testing my imagination, I guess. And
The
I think
limitlessness of the
First,
imagination.
first stop incest.
uh,
I said first
sorry.
stop incest. Yes, please go on.
Well, so there was incest. There was okay, so there was public masturbation, not of the male, a woman,
Mhm.
which is something that has I've been curious about. I mean, there were some funky things that I looked into, that I wrote, but I got such, like, my agent, she read it and she's like, really? You want to talk about this kind of stuff? Um, so it is, I think it's generally frightening, for even the people who are going to, for the author, we can test the boundaries and we can push, pretty far. But, the very first person who reads it and recoils is what gets you thinking, no, 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 I think I better stay away from this and go in some other direction.
Honey?
I kind of struggled with the question, and then I was thinking that I've always loved Ben Okri, who you were quoting, right? His writing, and he's very
Yes.
poetic, and he's a magnificent
Yes.
writer. But sometimes when you read him, and then you reread the sentence, you say, "What is he saying? It sounds beautiful, but what is it supposed to mean?" And I think it happens sometimes with the most excellent writing, with sacred texts, like, sort of revelations that they sound like, very, very, very poetic. But when kind of, as a struggling writer, you try to unpack it and you say that it doesn't make any sense. So sometimes, some things are so beautiful that one should just let them be. So if Ben Okre says this, then that's how it is. I am not in a position to question it or kind of or unpack it, or even kind of try to contemplate it. If Ben Okre said it, then yes, he's right.
I absolutely agree with you, because I love Ben Okri as well. So, should storytellers balance truth? Can truth be balanced? Storytellers like Manto and journalists have suffered the brunt of truth speaking. What what is their responsibility? Hanif, I'll go with you.
I mean, I don't know. I think journalists were sold this notion that somehow they have to be balanced. They have to tell both sides of the story. I don't think we've had that expectation from a fiction writer, because they should have everybody's version, even the inanimate objects. So they are kind of free to do. So yeah, we kind of were sold this very kind of Western idea of journalism, that there's something called neutrality. There's something called two sides to a story, and both should be given equal weight. But we've been watching for more than a year and a half, sort of there's this power kind of supported by all the other white powers, which goes and kills uh, dozens, if not hundreds, of children every day in Gaza, and we are expected to sit and worry about the other side of the story. And people do kind of, actively, they're making careers, making a living doing that. And yes, I've kind of spent a lot of time doing journalism, and that's what we were taught. But I've come to believe that was always utter and absolute nonsense, because people who came up with this notion think that they are the exception. We should all be objective, and they can go and do whatever the hell they want to do, and they should not be questioned. Which brings me now that this is a rare. Are you you're in Andhra and you're in Pune, or are you in New York? So
Yeah, I'm in New York.
Are India and Pakistan going to war or not? And when? Because I have to make travel plans. So if you have any knowledge.
No, they will not.
They will not?
I'm telling you, I am prophesying this.
Okay, I'm taking back. So you're saying that they won't go to war. Subi?
No.
I ran off.
This is fear mongering and hate mongering, nothing else.
No, Subi, will they go to war or not?
No, they will not go to war.
Oh,
okay.
No?
Yeah.
They should focus on getting,
I'm not asking what they should do. I'm just saying like what they would do, since you know them.
Yeah, I don't think so.
You don't think so? And Priya, you also think that they won't, or they will?
I don't think so.
Hmm?
I hope not.
You hope not. Okay, sorry, that was a little interruption. I'm a bit worried. I have to travel, and I'm just thinking if I should or if I should.
No, they will not.
Okay, I'm
I honestly believe that.
It's a by the way, it's a longer flight to the US now. And we have to take a stop over in Europe if you're flying Air India.
Okay.
Those things have happened.
Yeah.
So, Hanif, I'll ask another question, because you were talking about, journalism and neutrality. Is there a difference between neutrality and objectivity?
I don't know. I think I'll have to look up the dictionary, but I think they're in journalistic terms, they're kind of used pretty much in the same kind of sense, that you should give all the facts
in a journalistic context.
Yeah, I think they mean the same. They probably mean the same thing, as far as I know.
And Priya, same question. Should storytellers balance truth? And can truth be balanced?
So I think that storytellers have to carefully choose the stories that they want to tell. I recently undertook a project which is kind of, non-fiction-y folklore mix of folklore and truth. And there are elements, of that story which, if told this way, are going to upset people, but if told this way, will not. So I think my responsibility is to be sensible and not stupid. and tell the truth, but yes, balance it slightly without altering it. So I would not, I don't hold back, but I think it's just that sometimes you have to come at it this way versus this way, and still say what you want to say.
Subi?
Personally, for me, I am a very cautious person. I watch what I talk and I watch what I write. So if I had to give advice to a younger writer or some other writer who would seek advice from me, I would definitely advise them to balance fiction with truth, because I feel like there should be aim to create more resonance rather than alienation. And but then there is also case of like will be like multiple truths for multiple people and we cannot make everyone happy. So yeah, I would advise them to be, careful about writing fiction when if it's directed to some community or some society. Yeah, that's it.
Okay. So how do you strike a balance when it comes to creative freedom, when you're, talking about social responsibility, with what we have to deliver uh, to this world, to the reader? Priya, I'll go first. You go first.
Okay, so I mean, creative freedom, I think, is what most writers live by. And if you are writing with social responsibility as a goal and delivering what you think that the world wants to hear, it's going to come across as preachy and kind of cringy. So I don't think, honestly, that works. I think that Amitav Ghosh has made a decent pivot where he's talking about the planet, but somebody, I think it was the Guardian or somebody wrote a review of one of his recent books and said that he has fictionalized non-fiction. So he's telling stories to true. I mean, he's talking about true events, but he's telling them as stories. So I think that I don't think you can start out saying that you want to the creative freedom can't be compromised. You start there and then you see what comes out at the other end.
Honey?
Yeah, no, Priya is absolutely right. I think as a writer, one of your social responsibility is to entertain. And if you can't do that, then you might be telling like the noblest story on the planet, and it does not matter. So I think a writer has one main responsibility, and that responsibility is to the story, not to the society, I think.
Subi?
Yeah, I also agree with both of the other speakers. If at all, of course, there are things like to be careful of like moral and ethical responsibilities. But if you really feel strong about your story, then you can go with that. That's what I.
Should we stop thinking about imagination and by extension storytelling in terms of binaries, right and wrong, good and bad, light and darkness? Because sometimes, it's darkness that enables us to, see things, and light, again, I I think I'm always quoting that caveman thing, light is so blinding, it's so scintillating that it blinds. So should we stop thinking of imagination and creativity and storytelling in binaries? Subi, I'll go with you first, then Priya, and then Hanif.
Yeah, like in this session, we have discussed a lot about morality and ethics, but then I feel like at some point, if a writer burdens himself or herself with too much of those thoughts about what is right, what is wrong, what is, ethical, not ethical, then I think it will hamper a lot in the truest creativity of that person. So, and it is very different for every writer. The creative process of every writer is very different. Someone can pick up more inspiration from the darkest parts of their lives. Someone can pick up more inspiration from the daily friendly interactions they have. So as a writer myself, like I myself don't know why do I write. So for me to give like mm, like a very correct thing or statement about the creative process or how a writer should and not write, I think it's very difficult for me to say that.
Priya?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't think that imagination is limited by binaries, but it is driven by shades. And so, when I first started writing Ladies Tailor, I wanted to, I had my main character was this like big, strong, very, resourceful, competent guy who had everything under control, and he was boring as hell. So he had to have a lot of shades. So he did some really stupid thing. He had to do some really stupid things because otherwise he's not interesting. And I think stories have to do that because otherwise, you if they become it can't be one or the other. It has to be a mix, and and things that you don't expect, and things that the reader might say, okay, I knew that was coming, and that's okay, right? But lots of things that move in different directions. So shades and shades, and no one, or not binaries for sure.
Hanif?
Yeah, no, definitely. I agree. As I said, that stories are, I think, supposed to take your mind off the real world, but also show you a world that is possible, which you can inhabit. So there is no question of binaries here. Here, I think you should be able to write a story. As you said, sometimes it's people sometimes like reading about familiar things where they can tell this is going to happen or this looks very familiar to you.
Yeah.
And also stories that will surprise them. And I think above all, stories that will surprise the writers themselves, that you didn't know that this was what was going to, this is where I was going to go. So for me personally, that part is also important.
Thank you so much for that. Any last comments before we end this session? Subi, Priya, Hanif?
No, thank you very much, and I will hold you to your no war promise soon.
Yes,
I
you
hope
should.
you will. Yes.
Well, it was very good, actually. Got a lot of got me, because sometimes I think especially people like me, we do things by instinct at my age, and so kind of dissecting and analyzing and looking at things in a from a different perspective is interesting, because you kind of say, this is why I do this. So it was
True,
nice.
true. Thank you.
Yeah, like Priya, even me, like it was a very I would say very difficult interview for me, because I just felt like the topic itself, the responsibility of imagination for a writer, it's a big one, and to comment on like what a writer should write about or not write about. It's very difficult for another writer to say. And like Priya has said, I also come from a very different background, agriculture background, and I write stories on instinct. And sometimes when I also read or interact with other literary people who has like critical bent of mind, talking about like pointing out politics in some of my stories, but I just wrote the story without, even having the intention or the ambition to highlight the political issues. So it was an enriching interview for me, and I feel like I need to think more about all these deeper aspects of writing, and I learned a lot from other writers also today.
Thank you so much for that, Subi and Hanif and Priya. And thank you for Subi. This has been a learning experience for me as well. And, your perspective and, of course, Hanif's and Priya's, it has given so much food for thought. So thank you so much, all of you, for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, my
Thank you for
pleasure.
having us. Okay,
Thanks for
bye.
having
Bye.
me.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. Good night, everyone.
Bye.
And we